Hi there. In today's session, we'll be looking at how to automate reports using Power Query and pivot tables. It's going to be an interesting session, a hands-on session as well. Just to note, the sound quality wasn't very fantastic, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it all the same. For today's session, we'll be going how we can automate our reports using Power Query and and pivot tables in Excel. Now, for some persons, some people may already be familiar with how pivot tables work, but not everyone might be too familiar with how a how the Power Query might be. So I would try to take it in bits, and then from there we would a hands-on exercise with the data that I had sent during the week. This exercise today. Now, in terms of Power Query, so Power Query is a tool that you can use to clean data. Last week, we did some cleaning, data cleansing using functions in Excel. That's one way you can do it. Another way you could do Power Query, which is a tool within Excel that instead of writing formulas, you can go through Power Query and use that to clean your data. In the previous one, what we did there in the exercise, as I said, we were writing some formulas. Now, this time, we're going to use Power Query. Now, before you can use Power Query, one of the things we need is to put our table in a structure. Now, if the table or the data rather, is not in a structured format, it would be a bit difficult to make the most of Power Query. Now, what we normally do to start off it, if you come to the data tab here, if you click on from table or range, what it will do is it will pick the table range that you want to convert, or the data range you want to convert into a table. So I've clicked on it right now. It's trying to process that. You see it's at the bottom here showing loading, is loading it. It will then try to convert it to a table. Now, when it tries to convert it to a table, the first thing it would say is where is the data of your table, and then it will highlight my table has a header. Now I'll cancel that and then come back again. Now alternatively, if you wanted to do it, if you click on table in the insert, so if you go to the insert and you click on table, it will do the same thing, which it just highlights the data range, and then it says you have a table. Now sometimes what you might notice, let me just do this quickly here. I would insert a blank field here. Now, if you insert a blank field and then you come back to table, this is it here, come back to table, what it will do is it will take from this column A and then stop at column B. If there's any record in column O, like we can see, it won't take that field. So you only have this, and that's one of the things that we talk about structured data, because where there are empty columns in the data set, you will get it will only pick the columns that you have the data within that range, and it will skip it. Alternatively, what I can do is, because I know that there is extra data, I can manually here and then type in I can then type in the other part P, but that's the, let's say, an efficient things we always try to do is when you to convert a data set you have to a table, first make sure that there are no empty columns in the data set. I would that, and then you can go ahead to convert it. We'll quickly do that. I would convert it to a table. It says my table has headers, so I've selected that it has headers. Now this is a table, and if you come here, if you come to the top here, you'll see the table name. You can change this table name to whatever we want to do. So maybe I might change it to recruitment data. Now, when I change it to recruitment data, when I'm going to use it in the pivot table, you would see it there in the pivot table as the table we are referring to, but we'll come to that. Now, going back to what I was saying, if you want to use Power Query, so if I'm going to use Power Query, I come to data, and then I select from data range. I've already converted it. Alternatively, if you were going to use this, and this is something similar you would see in Power BI, where you click on get data, it will then give you the option, where are you putting data from? Is it from a file? You see the option file, you see an Excel file, a text file, whichever you have, find queries. If you are pulling from a database, that's an option. It's actually possible if I had access to an SQL database to put that in Excel using this get data. Because we've already converted, all I would just do is come here, click on from table range. Okay, so it will pull that. Now you can see it's starting to open the Power Query editor. Now in Power Query editor, I can then start cleaning my data. So if a person isn't very efficient, maybe I'm not very familiar with how to write a lot of Excel function, clean data, a quick and efficient way, Power Query. Now you will notice that because I had named the table data, when it pulled it into Power Query, that's the name of the table. And this interface, you'll see this interface a lot in Power Query, what we refer to as the extract, transform, and load, which I had mentioned last week. So we've now loaded the table into Power Query, and we're going to do a few steps to clean this data into the version that we want. Now, there are a number of things here. You see the home, the transform, the add column, and then the view. Now, one of the things that you see here before we go ahead is when you're using Power Query, what it does is you can see this field where you have the view. You can view the column quality. What the column quality will show you would be, okay, how many of the entries in this field are valid, how many errors are there, and how many of them are empty. This instance, I can see that 100% is valid, error, no MC. If I scroll across, let me see, is there anyone here? Okay, so everything here is all 100% valid and there are no empty fields. But as we go along, we will come to see some empty fields when we're working on them. If I click on the column profile, with the column profile, what it does is it then gives a breakdown to say, okay, what's the count of the row? Is there anyone that is error, any distinct value? So it gives me additional details. Like say I click here now, you see, okay, 672 counts, distinct is 172, and then unique is 96. So I can see the breakdown of different rows in this data set. Excuse me. I'll take that off. All right, so we're going to go through the different steps here. Now, what we want to do in this data set, which is, it has data sets of profile of job, which has been extracted from Glassdoor. We're going to look at what are the skill sets when these adverts were placed, what are the skill sets that were required. So we're going to create additional columns to highlight the skill sets that each emphasize, and then we would pivot table. The first one in this index column, we don't need this index, so it was coming from the data source, so we don't need the index column. So all we simply do is come here at the top and then remove the columns. Okay, that's fine. In the job title is fine. We can see it's valid here. Now we come to the salary estimate. Now for the salary estimate, what we want here, we're going to do one thing here. We want to separate out the minimum salary, also get the maximum salary, and then we pull out the name of this where we got the data source. That's Glassdoor. If you look at it, so if I click on this field here, you see all the different sources, and I can see what it looks like here. I just have a idea. So I'll cancel that and I come back here. So I want to extract this and separate it. So the first thing I can do, I want to duplicate this this column. If I'm going to duplicate this column, what I can do is just right click on the column, and then you see it gives me additional options, and I duplicate the column and it takes it to the end. Now, taking it to the end, I can move it back, move it here, I right click again, and then say you would see the option here, and I moved the beginning. So beginning is moved it to the beginning, and then I just simply bring it here. Okay, all right, fantastic. So in this, now that I have it here, I'm going to do a few extractions on this particular one. So the first thing I will do is I'm going to split the data set based on separate the amount from the Glassdoor. And to do that, I will come here, split column. If I'm going to split the column, I mentioned last week about delimiter. A delimiter is a character that you are using to separate your data set. So I'm going to use the delimiter. If I use, so I'll use the delimiter here. Okay, it's coming up. All right, so what's the delimiter that I want to use? I want to use K. So I want to use K. Now, the question would be split at leftmost, rightmost, each occurrence. But if I'm going to split, what I'm thinking of doing is to say, okay, let's use the rightmost delimiter. I assume that's this last one, and let's see how that goes. Okay. What is done now is that it splits it based on the last K, and you can see all the last Ks are out, and then this takes the other one here. So that's fine. The next one I'm going to here, I'm going to split this column again based on the delimiter, which is this space in between. We'll split the delimiter, and this time I'm going to use a dash, split it. Okay, so I'm going to split that. All right, so you can see now that I've done that, I've split it by the dash and it's taking that out. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to extract within this salary column now. This one will come to, so once we've done all the cleansing, we'll come back to rename the headers, which we'll do gradually. Now for this one, I want to then take out the character and the K. What I would do there would be if I come to transform here, and then I click on extract. Now for extract, the question text, there are options, the length, the first character, last character. But in this instance, I want the text a specific set of characters, which is what you would have done if we're doing it last week and we're going to left, mid, text before, text after. And it makes it easier. So the start delimiter is the dollar, and then the end delimiter is the K. That's what I want to extract. And I click on OK. Now with that, you can see it's extracted it, and I don't have the characters at the back. So let me just check that it's all here. Yep, so I can see that everything is fine here. And that's for that one. So we are done with this. Now in this one here, what I'm going to do is because I wanted to leave a range. To get that range, what I would be looking to do is I want to extract anything before this open bracket. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to extract. I'm going to extract anything before. That's what I want to do. Extract anything for open bracket. That's all I'm going to be doing in this one. Okay, so now that I've done that, you can see it's extracted anything before the bracket, and I have that there. Let me just check. Okay, we're good there. The next column, going to the next column now. In this column, I want to extract the name of the, I want to extract the name in between this. So what I would do here as well is the same thing. I want to do the extract, very simple. And I'm going to take the extract the text between the delimiters. And I would come here, open bracket, and then I have a close bracket. So I'm taking the text between the delimiters, and that's about it. So I've gotten the name of the source where I got the data from out of it. So that's now, please note, one of the things that makes the automation very effective is that if this data set is something I'm going to be using on a monthly basis, anytime I perform any step Power Query, what it does by the side is that it saves these steps. Now, when you pull in a new set of data into Power Query, what it simply does is it will apply the steps and then work data. So if I have so it have in the back of my mind, what are the series of steps I want to apply when working on the data set, so that way, what Power Query does is it records those steps, and every time I pull in data, all it simply does is it applies those series of steps to the new data set, and that's all. I don't have to go back to start writing a new set of anything at all. All those steps have been applied automatically. Okay. Now, in the next one here in the job description. Now, in this job description, we're going to do something that I think is very interesting here. What we want to do in the job description is that we want to see which skill set is required for each of the job description. It's like saying when you go to LinkedIn, for example, and you see a job description, and you want to see, okay, what are the skill sets that are required from this? To do that, we in this place, we're going to add about 5 columns. Now, those 5 columns, here, you come to the add column here. In this add column, we're going to do a conditional column. Now, it's so just as the name implies, conditional column depends. What is the condition? What it says here is when I click on it is column name. So I'm going to name this one Python skill required. Python skills required. And then I will come here, the column name. What it's going to say is if, and I'm going to check the column, if the job description contains word Python. If it contains the word Python, then return 1. Otherwise, return is 0. That's what it's going to do. And I click on that. Now, automatically, once I've done that, it adds a new field here, which is the Python skill required. I'm going to go back again to that column. We're going to do 3 of those others. So I come back here. I come back to the job description column again, and I do conditional column. And this time I am doing Excel underscore skills required. All right. So I'm going to be adding that. So let's do that quickly. Job descriptions. If the job description contains Excel, return. So give me 1. Otherwise, return 0. So that's for Excel. Going back again. So I'm going to do that quickly so we don't spend too much time on the data cleansing. I'm going to do that again. So we want to find A. So it's AWS. So to read AWS underscore skills underscore required. And then the job description, if the job description contains AWS, return 1. Otherwise, return is 0. And I've done that one. Back again. I think we're almost done with the conditional. I think we just have SQL. Require SQL as a skill. SQL skills the score required. All right, so you do that again. Job description contains SQL, then 1, and then 0. Okay, and I think the last one is table skills required. So let's see. So this last one, conditional column, and I would just add that, and we're done. That table underscore skills required. Okay. All right. So job description, if the job description contains table, then 1, otherwise 0. Okay. All right. So we're all done here. Now, once we're done, what we want to then look at is say, okay, we want the total number of skills because that's going to help us do some further analysis in this data set. And to do that, all we would simply click here to say this is a custom column. Now, in the custom column, can write a number of functions. Power Query itself has its own language, which they call M code. It can be a bit, in my view anyway, it can be a bit complex, but I try to work with the basic ones. So if I come here and then I type the custom column, and I want the custom column to be total skills here. These total skills here, total skills. And then what I want to here, I want to add all these columns. Say, I want to get the sum of all the skills. This is Python skill required plus. Now notice when I type the plus, you see there's an error sign here. Now, with that error sign, what is showing that it shows error, that there's a problem with this. If I remove that plus, you see no syntax errors have been detected. So that means this is fine. Always note that when you're trying to, if you are creating a custom column in Power Query and you see this, it's also similar. You see it in a few times in Excel when you are doing some work in Excel. Sorry, not Excel, in Power BI rather. Okay. I'll click here, Excel skills required, add that, and then click the plus, AWS skills required, click the plus again, SQL skills required. So I insert it, plus, and then table skills required, and I click on insert, and we're done. So you can see no syntax error detected have been detected, and we are good here. And that's our column for table skills, and we have that all there. Okay. All right. So I think we're done with the job description. What we're for the job description. Now, if you can see this column, the rating and the company name. The rating is also, you can see there's similar numbers like the rating. What they did here was the company name and the rating. So what we can do is we can do two things. We can leave the rating as it is, and then in this one, just extract the company and take out the rating. Then is a duplicate. What I'm going to do there is just come back here on the transform. Yeah, come to transform, and then I click on extract. Now, if I'm going to extract, what I want to extract is text for a delimiter. Okay, so let's see. It should be, let me see if I do the split by delimiter. Okay, all right, so great. Now, why I wanted you to split by delimiter is because what it has done is it's done a custom, and then Power Query use, like, I'll call it like a syntax to say it's identifying the number. So this hash, the number. So if there is a number, you can split it. So if I split it, what it will do is that it will split this column based on this number, and then take out, split it into the company name and then the number into two. If I split it that way, let's do that first. So I've split it into company name and then the rating. I can take out this rating. I'm not sure I need it, so we can just delete it. So I right click on it and then I delete, remove. Okay, so that's removed. We're almost done with this. We're going to do two things here. So for this one, we have the location and then we have the headquarters. What we want here is that we want to separate this into the location city and then the location state. A good way to do that would be to split by what we call the delimiter. Here would be the comma, which we can see here. And I'll just do split by delimiter. What's the delimiter that I'm splitting by? I'm splitting by a comma, and it's going to say each of the comma. So that's, you can see there was leftmost, rightmost, and then each of, I've split that out. Okay, and we're done. Now that's split it in here. So you can see here, this was what I was talking about. In this location, there are a few empty rows within this column, and we can fill out those empty rows when we have that. We'll quickly come to that. We can do that now. So if I want to fill out any empty row, I would come to the replace values, and then in the replace values, click here on the replace values. Value to find is empty. So I'll leave this empty because what this means is empty, and then I replace it with a null value. So I replace with null. Okay. So let's see. That's still okay. So it's still showing. Oh, okay. So let me change that because because that didn't work. What I'll do is I'll click on this, cancel this replace value step here because it means that I don't want to repeat it. If I bring in a data set in the future, repeat that step again. So what I'll do is here, I'll come here, cancel that step. So it takes it back one step and I'll repeat it again. If I do replace values again, it looks for null empty, and then let me do NA, and let's see if that replaced with NA. This is interesting. Let me see. It is, so let me see what this null is that is showing up here. I want to see why it is in. Okay, so let's try that again. So I'll cancel the filtered action, cancel the replace value, and then let's try if this is replace value. Let me see. Value to find is, and then replace with non-NA. Okay, all right, so that works. So what I did this time was I looked for and then replaced it with NA. So if I click here, yeah, so you can see it here, NA. So all the null values were replaced with NA. All right, and then I'll do the same thing for headquarters. Now for headquarters, just split by delimiter. What's the delimiter we're splitting by? We're splitting by comma, each occurrence, and we're all done. Very quick. I think there's nothing we're not doing anything too fancy there. Now notice this one. This is a good place to use it. Now when are doing such reports at work and are using this to try and clean your data. You can see here, it's showing error. Now, one of the things that you notice, as I mentioned around the column quality, this indicators tell you the state of the data in that. You can see the green here is valid, red is error, and then black is empty. Now you can see here, it's showing me valid -%, error is 4%. So there's a problem with this column, and I need to fix that column. Same thing with this one after I split it. So what I can do quickly here is how I can highlight it. So I hold it down, and then also this one, I click on the two of them, and then I come here. So replace errors. Enter the value which will replace errors in the selected columns. Value that I want to, I can use NA. Any place where there is an error in these two columns, replace it with NA. Okay, all right, so that's, and then you can see back again at the top, you see valid is 100% for the two columns where there were some issues with them. We're almost done. So we'll come here again. So we have the size, and then after the size, I think it's just in the size column, what we want to do is we want to extract anything, any word that is employees out of it. Simple thing that we're just going to do, just come extract anything text for delimiter. So what's the delimiter we are using? Let me use employees. Okay. All right. So I've taken out anything wherever you see a text before the employees. I've taken that out. Now the same thing again. You can see there's an error here. Let me quickly check. Okay. So what I can do here is the same thing. I will come here, replace errors. Where there's an error, replace the value with 0. Okay. All right. Now notice, as I said, for each step I'm doing within this activity is recording it by the side. So if I want to do this again in the future, I don't need all these steps every time. That's why sometimes it's very important that if you have an idea of the steps that you're going to be doing data set, just follow through steps in the first instance, and then any other report you're preparing or anything you need to work on, automatically once you upload it into Power Query, it will go through all these series of steps and clean your data for you so that you don't have to keep writing any formula. The other important part of it is to make sure that the structure of the data remains the same, because once there's a change in the structure of the data, it will affect how the output of that data is going to look like. Right, so I will come to revenue space here. For the revenue side, all I would do is I want to extract any text before, so I want to take out this USD. So I don't want anything before USD. So let me just do space, because like I said, the space there, USD, and then close that. Okay. All right, so it's the same thing that I have here. There's a bit of an error here. Let me replace, so what I'll do, I'll replace the errors here, replace the error value. So what will I use as a value? I'll use unknown. Okay, so I'm going to replace it with unknown. All right, so you can see now that I've replaced with unknown, that's clean now. And then the final thing I want to do here is in this, I think, okay, no, I think this is fine. We can leave this one here. Let's leave this. I wanted to split this competitor, but I think we can leave that. Now, when you are working with it, one of the things we always that you will find is that in terms of the data type, there are different types of data types. So if you click, when you are looking at it, when you click at the top, you see ABC here, you see dollar here, you see whereas I think I saw one when I did something a while back. Yeah, you can see 1, 2, 3. Now that tells you type of data in that column. So what we can do, two things we're going to do quickly here is that we're going to look at each of the columns, rename them, and then also standardize them in terms of the type of data sets in that column. If I come to the job title here, job title, the types of data will have decimal, currency, whole number, percentage, or is it a dates column, or is it a text, or is it a true or false kind of column? Now this is already a text. Here you see ABC, so we are fine there. This is also a text, so we're not doing anything here. This is a text. So even though it's showing as a number here, it's showing as a text. What we need to change this to a number. So I'm going to change this to a whole number. Okay, and that's fine. Here it's showing as dollar, and I want to change it to a whole number instead. I just do that, so that's fine there. Here was change the headers here. To do that, I just will click on the salary estimate. So if I double click here, this will mean salary, and that's fine. And then this place is the max salary, and that's all we have there. Here is the this is Glassdoor. So I just change this to information. So I'll change this to information source. Okay. All right. So that's information source all done there. Where else again am I updating? Yes. So we're going to update this as well. This is the company name. So let's change. I think initially because we split, the company name is left the same. Then this is location state. So I'll change this to location state. Double click here again to change this to location city. Oh, sorry, this is New York is the state. I think New York is the state, right? So this is state, not the city. So I'll come back here. Yeah, so it's complex because there's two. So let me change this. A good way to do that is I just cancel the step that I've done here instead of down. So if I cancel this, it will change it back. So I come back here, and then this is location city, and this is location state. Yes, fine. Okay, we're almost done. Here you have headquarters. So we'll do the same thing here. Double click on that top, headquarters city. And then you can also right click if you want to do that as well. But a faster way that I have over time is just double click at the top. This is headquarters state. Okay, so let me just check that everything is fine before. So this is a number. So you know this is 1.2. So if you click on it here, so you see it's a decimal number. So we're fine there. This is text, 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 text. We've changed that. Data type there. So this data type here is a bar. Now, if we were to, even though this is a year, the challenge is if you change this to a date type, it automatically changes the way that field is because a date will have the day, the month, and the year, but this only comes here. So if I had to change it to a date, it throws up a different error. So that's something that one needs to be mindful of when trying to change certain fields. Now, because we're not going to be doing that, I would come back to cancel that step here by the right, which is, I'm going to cancel that, but not that step. Here you can see it's showing ABC or number. So I'll change this to a text specifically. A good way. So since I have like 3 of them here, so I'll just change this to text. Where is text here? Text. Change this as well to text. Okay. I can see a few of them here. So if I don't want to have to be clicking one by one, what I can do is, so let me do it for this one. I'll just change this one to text. Now, a fast way to do it is click on each of them, hold Control down, Control, 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 and then at the top here you see data type in the Transform tab. So if I come here at the top, Transform, and I change this to whole number, it applies the action across all the columns instead of going through one by one and I'm trying to click on each of them. So once I'm done with all of that and I can see that all those columns have been changed, so you can see all of them are now numbers. What I simply do would be a sense check that I'm okay with all the columns within my data set, that they are all fine. Okay. All right. So once we see that all the fields are fine, okay, you can see there's one here that has a problem. So here was salary estimates. I think I changed this to salary max. So let me just do that again. So this was supposed to be in salary. Let me see. Okay, change that. And then this is max salary. Let me see. Do I have a duplicate of that? No, that's max salary, and then I double click here again. So this is cost information. All right. Okay. So I think we're all done with the headers. What happened? I thought I changed this. Yeah, let me just change this. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So let me just, so that's part of it. I just do a final sense check to be sure that all the headers are fine. And once all the headers are fine, I can also still click at the top here. You see this table here. If you click here, it gives you a few options where do you want to use the first row as headers? You want to choose certain columns you want to keep or keep top rows. Depends on what you want to do. Do you want to merge or append queries? If I had two data tables, if I were appending a table, so append is to add order, but it means that the two tables must have the same information. If I were to merge is from the side, so that would be like, but maybe when we get into things like SQL, that would be like a join. You can do what we refer to as an inner join if the tables have a field that is common and you are joining data sets together. But for this, we're not using any of this. At this point, I think we are fine on the data sets. We can see this is all good. Why I came here, I remember, was if you want to choose certain columns, you click on choose. So maybe when I finish my data cleansing, there are certain columns that I don't can deselect it at this point. Once I deselect it, in the final output included, they'll be hidden. If I come back here at any point in time and I select them again, they will come back. But as I mentioned, please note, anytime you perform any action, it's recorded in this side bar where we say apply steps. So each of the steps that we have in cleaning this data is saved here. So if next week you have a data set you need to work, instead of having to go through all these steps all over again, once you upload the data into Power Query, it would follow through all these steps, clean your data, and then you are done. And the final part of it would then be to close and load. And that's what we refer to as the load. As I said it last week, I've also said it earlier today. You have the extract, transform, and then the load, and then the load part. So now we're going to load the data back into the Excel interface where we can then go ahead to the where we are going to go ahead to create the pivot tables. So I will close and load the data sets. Once I'm doing that, it's loading the data set, and then this is what we have. So once we've done that, it loads that data set, and what you can see, it's a query here. Now, this query, you could use it if you want to create a data model and you have some other, maybe if you are going to use what we call data analysis expression. But it's a very fast way to now begin to create your pivot tables. And one of the good things about pivot tables are pivot tables make it easy to get a quick sense of a large data set. So you don't have to struggle to see what's happening in the pivot table. If you're going to create a pivot table, all you simply do is come back to the insert tab here at the top. Then you click on pivot table and then you say from table range. If I click on the from table range, it comes here to say the recruitment data. That's the name of the table range, which was what I created earlier. Now, if I could create it as a new in an existing worksheet, but because we haven't created it before, I'm going to worksheet and I click on OK. All right, now that I've clicked on OK, what it does is it creates a pivot table inside a new worksheet, and then you have the fields that you want to work with. You have your filters, your columns, your rows, and then your values. The beauty about having this data in the pivot table here is that I can use it to create an Excel dashboard. So I think that Excel dashboards now with the advance with having Power BI, Power BI gives you a bit more flexibility in what you can do with data. So you may not necessarily need to do it here. But in this instance, we're going to just quickly have a sense of what our data looks like. So we'll click here and then come down to, so what we want to do is with the pivot table, it gives us an idea of the structures. If I want my data to be in rows, for example, I want the job title to be in rows, I click on it. row. If I pull that data to the job title row, then if I want to see what are the skill sets required for each of them, I can then take it to the column. I go column here, Python skill required. So instead I'll click that here. So yep, so I put it in the values instead. So I can see in the values, Python skill required, Excel, AWS, SQL, tables, and then total skills. So let me pull this, reduce this a bit. So I can see the total skills in all the job sets. Okay, so table skills, something here. Okay, so it gives you a fair idea of each of them. Now, what you are seeing here, because it's important to understand how this works. In Excel, what it would do is that it's adding each of them, each of the skills. But in terms of this final one here, what we are looking at may be like the average number of skills. It's an average of 1, 3 that we are looking for. Now, to do that, all I would simply do is come back to the sum total skills. I can click here, click on the value field settings. If I click on the value skill settings, it gives me this box where you see the value field settings, and I can click on the count, the average, the average maximum. I want to get like an average here. I click on it as an average, and it gives me an average all the number of skills in these different boxes here. And sometimes that's where you now see the difference, because if I were saying the sum, now for that sum, what it's telling me is how many skills. If I click here, for example, let's use this senior data scientist for this illustration. I click on the senior data scientist, close this, and then let's go to that field. So you can see senior data science 1, 1. So ordinarily, what it should be is the average of the skills. So here it gives you the average, and that's what you have as the total number of the 4 skills, which is Python, Excel, AWS, SQL, and then table. How many of those skills do you want? An average is 2 out of the 4 skills. That's what you require for that senior data analyst. That's the details. Let me delete this back. Delete, and I come back here. All I simply do, if I want to take this out, I just drag it out here, drag all of them, drag all of them, drag this out, drag this out. Then I think that's just about it. So I would use this now. What we want to start doing is, okay, let's start breaking this down into a way that if somebody looked at this information, we've done the cleaning part of it. We now want to be able to pivot table to present some form of information that if someone looked at it, they can make a quick decision. The first one, let's say I will take the total skills, and then I will do an average. Let's say average, what average number of skills. Here you see all of these numbers. So if I hold shift and down, highlight everything, one, it will give me a quick way of formatting that data. And I say the numbers, I just want, so I reduce decimal place 0 separator. All right, so this gives me the average number of skills that one. Now, the next thing we can do is we can add a filter. We can add some filters to say, okay, what industry are we looking at? So if I add a filter at the top here, this gives me that option. If I select this here, I can see if I want multiple options, click on the multiple option, come back to all, and then I want to see maybe for accounting, the accounting industry, maybe there's just one job role there, which is data scientist. If I deselect that, banking and credit, okay, so see more options are coming out. So for someone in the banking industry, what does this? Please note, this is not a fair representation, because if I was seeing banking industry and you see data analyst and you see the average skill set is 0, you would question, okay, isn't that a skill set that is required for somebody that is going to work within that field? Okay, so I would clear that out. Let's just select everything again, and it gives us everything back. There are 2 other ways you can do it. I want to create multiple tables, because what I'm going to do now is use them to create some form of charts. So if I want to create another table, I just click at the top, copy, highlight everything, copy, and then Control V, it replicates that data set at the bottom. And then this time I will just take out portion of it. Now, to explain the reason why I did that is ordinarily I could come back here to say recruitment data and then come to sets, click on pivot table from data range, and then existing worksheets. It will now ask me for the location. I will come back here and then maybe select where I want it to put. But that's like, I've done like 4 or 5 steps. But with this one, all I simply did was to copy the data and then paste it here. And all the next thing I will start doing is to change a few things that I put in there. So instead of job title here, let's say I want to the location state. So let's say location, that's quite a lot still. I want something smaller. Let's see industry. Industry is still a lot. I'm just looking for something that we can, okay, yeah, okay. So that's fine. This is sector. Now, in terms of the sector, we want to see what's the total number of maybe jobs that they put out in the different sectors to have an idea of, you can see count of job titles. The business services had the highest number of titles that they put out on information technology. Now, you can see because I wasn't able to look at it, what I noticed was that I saw business services first, and that caught my eye. What you can do, make it easier, is if you want to change this to hierarchy, right click on the data source, data on that table, and then sort by largest to smallest, and you can get that. So that's one. Another thing you can then do is if I add it, maybe I want to give a percentage. What's the percentage of this job set within this industry or within this sector? So if I add it again, and then you see it gives me count, it will replicate it again. And then this time, if I right click and I want to summarize the value or show values rather, show value as a percentage of row total or as a percentage of column total, which should be column total. So I've changed to column total. So you can see that information technology gives us 27% of the total jobs within within the sectors that are being advertised. So out of the 672, information technology represents 27.98% of the job titles. Again, I'll just copy this one here. I'll paste that again, and I'll just do maybe little changes on it. And let's use the salary estimate as a good example. Let's say salary estimate. Let's say salary estimate. That's so I put in values. I want it to be in salary estimate. I want salary estimate. This gives me a range of the salary estimate, and then I want to see how many jobs are advertised within the different categories of salary estimate. You can see that then there are 2 ways I could do it. I might not be able to set higher, so let me say order it because this is not a number, but I can use the count here. So if I change this and I sort from largest to smallest, we can see here that jobs that have a salary range of 99 and 32K have the highest count in terms of the job titles. And that gives you a fair idea. The other thing we can do, we can just add a few filters. So if I come here, location city as a filter, location state as a filter. Okay, so that's, I want a bit more space. So I just insert a few rows here so that it's not too close to that other table. Okay, all right. If I come here and I add location city and then location state, and I can use that to filter my table at any point in time. Yeah, so if I don't want that, then highlight all of this and it gives me back the table. What you can do is there are other options. You can use a slicer. If I don't want to add the filter this way, what I can do is I can come here, click on this slicer, which is another way to add a filter to my table. If I click on the slicer here, what it does is it gives me everything that is here, and I can use it, then start inserting what slicers do I want. So let's say I want to insert a slicer for location, city, headquarters, and that's okay. All right, so you see, it's giving me the slicers, which I can use, can play around. So instead of using this filter here, I can use this as a way to filter this table. If I click on that, it filters it. I cancel that out. Let me say I'm using the location states. Cancel that out. this is one way you can use to create that table, so that way it becomes a bit more functional. If I want to make some adjustments in my slicer, you see, if I click on this, the slicer at the top here, what I can would be, okay, how do I want maybe the design of my slicer to look like, or maybe the slicer settings. If I click on the slicer settings, it gives me an idea of what that slicer would look like, and then you can make some adjustments in the slicer based on how you would want the person who is interacting with the report to see at the end of it. Two options: do it as a filter here in your data, or create an actual slicer which the person can interact with. So let me take this one out. Let me just delete this quickly. And then the last part of it would be, as I mentioned, if I select this data range here and I want to insert a chart, which is usually what we are creating a dashboard with the chart. So the first thing, if I want to create a dashboard in Excel, I would first have had to create all these pivot tables. After creating the pivot tables, then I can add a dashboard. I can come back here, insert, and then you can see this recommended chart. So if I click on the recommended charts, depends on if I don't have anyone in mind anyway, it gives me an idea of the recommended chart. So these are the options provided. Let's say I want a bar chart instead, and then I click on that. Okay. Right. So, and this is something that I can leave in this report. It's a visual way for the person to see it instead of having to look at it, instead of having to look through everything and trying to figure out what's going on. I've created a visual picture for what that person can do. Now, once you've had this, anytime there's an addition, all you simply need to do, come here, this your anywhere in this page, and right click, and then just click on refresh. Once you click on refresh, it will refresh everything in the data set, and then you will see an updated view. That way, I don't need to start coming back to prepare the whole report all over again. I've the cleaning of the data. I've put it into Power Query. It's maybe there's an additional row of data that has come in that is updated, and all I simply come here to do is refresh the data. If for any reason this data set has changed location, all I would simply need to do is the pivot analyze and then say change data source. Once I click on the change the data source, it would ask me where am I taking the data from. If it was from an external source, you can then choose an external source, go back to where the data was picked from, and then change the location. Maybe if I were using SharePoint, for example, for those who use SharePoint, that's Microsoft SharePoint office location, and you had connected to an external data source, change the location, and automatically report's location will be updated and it will refresh it. So I've canceled that and I'm back in this again. And that's about it. Some other few things here is if you want to change the table option, so you could change the design. So that's design rather. I could change the design here. Don't show subtotal, show the subtotal. And that will give me an idea, maybe just change the layout of my report, depends on what I am trying to achieve with this report. If there are multiple things that I had done and I want to change the look and feel, I can use change the feel, change the design, maybe the color, for example, like this one now. I just clicked on the color, so I'm changing the color for this pivot table. Now, all of that is just to make it visually attractive or appealing to the person who is using the report. But to sum it all up, the four things or the steps that we looked at were, first of all, get my data. Once I've gotten my data, then convert it to a table, because that table presents a structure which Power Query is going to work with subsequently, and then use the data, get it into Power Query, have data, and then from data table read, we can then follow the steps in Power Query to clean that data. After we've cleaned the data, we can go ahead to use the set option, which is here, and then create a pivot table. In addition, what I've didn't mention, this recommended pivot tables, and it will give you options that you could see, okay, what are the options for pivot tables that I can create if I'm finding it too difficult to think through. These are options that is provided, and I can use any of these represent my data before I send it out. So like this one now, it's given, I think I saw one here. Yes, some of written by size, each of the different ones. So there are suggestions which I can use when preparing if I think that it's a bit difficult for me to walk through it on my own. And once I've gotten it into the pivot tables, I can manipulate it, add filters, add sliders, and if there is an update in the data, all I simply need to refresh the data and that will be updated. So that helps you automate the process of weekly reporting so that you don't have to go through all the steps again or cleaning the data, trying to get into a format that the stakeholders can use. But gone through all those steps using the things that I've mentioned, which is Power Query, clean the data in Power